Teddy Ruxpins are evil. Oh. Alright, so this is Seth MacFarlane's first feature film, and for those of you who don't know, Seth MacFarlane created the TV series Family Guy. He also created the other similar series and spin-off series such as American Dad, which is terrible, and The Cleveland Show, which is surprisingly not that bad. But a lot of people have wanted to know how I feel about Family Guy. Do I watch it? Do I think it's funny? Do I think it sucks? And the answer is, I used to watch it, and I used to think it was funny. I think it was funny in the beginning, and then it wasn't. I haven't really watched it in a long time. But if you have seen Family Guy or any of Seth MacFarlane's shows, you're probably going to be familiar with this kind of humor. And so if you like this kind of humor, I think you're probably going to like this, but I don't think that this is Seth MacFarlane at his funniest. And as I've said before, comedy really is completely subjective, but for me personally, if this movie has one big problem, it's that it's just not that funny. So the premise is that there was a little boy in the 80s who didn't have a whole lot of friends, and so he wished for his teddy bear to come to life, and by an amazing miracle, his teddy bear actually comes to life. And you're thinking, this is along the lines of your typical childlike fairy tale story, but then it goes in a different direction. It goes in the direction of, well, here's what happened when that kid and the teddy bear grew up, and they weren't innocent anymore. And I thought that was going to be interesting. I really did, and I'm really disappointed, because I really thought that was going to be interesting. I always think to myself, like, why doesn't anybody do stories about the parts of stories that we don't see? Like, when the two characters fall in love and they live happily ever after, I'm always like, well, what happened in the ever after? Did they just do nothing? Did they peak here? Is there nothing more to say about this? Did they ever fight? Did they ever question this relationship after it wasn't new and novel anymore? And so I heard about this premise, and I'm like, that's actually kind of interesting. Like, what happens when this special bear that came to life and everybody thinks it's a miracle, what happened when the novelty wore off? Like, how did the bear feel about that? What did the bear do when it wasn't the special bear anymore? And this movie portrays the bear just as kind of like a regular guy. And at first I'm like, this is going to be a really interesting premise. And then it wasn't. I think the biggest flaw in this film is that it's really not about the bear all that much. I mean, we see him and he does things that you wouldn't normally see a bear that came to life doing, like, you know, using drugs and any other number of things, profanity, you know. It's not really all that funny. I think there are certain things that in and of themselves are not that funny. Drug use is one of them. Profanity is one of them. You know, when there's no context, I mean, and there's the context of it's coming from a live bear, but that gets old after like a second. And after a while, you start to realize that if you replace this bear with a dude, none of this is funny. And the fact that it's a bear only makes that funny for a second. I think that's probably the biggest problem with this film, is that it's another one of those things where they're taking one concept and expecting that concept to carry a whole film comedy-wise, and it doesn't work for that long. And the rest of the time, I really just kind of wanted this to end after a while. I'm not saying I hated it. I thought that it was amusing, but I think I only really laughed, like genuinely laughed a couple of times. And after that, I really just thought it was a bit dull. Most of the film is actually about Mark Wahlberg's character and whether or not he's going to keep or lose his girlfriend. And a lot of that ties in with the concept of the bear, but I feel like the concept of a bear coming to life and losing his novelty and where does he go from there was kind of wasted on this. They don't even really address that after a while. And I mean, Seth MacFarlane really likes this concept of things that aren't supposed to talk and have real lives, talking and having real lives. But most of the time, in his other shows, the whole point of that is that nobody really addresses it. Nobody really addresses the fact that Brian the dog can talk. He just does, and nobody questions it. And that's fine for a TV series, but not only is the whole film primarily supposed to be centered around the bear that can talk, but the movie is called Ted, so he's the title character. This is his movie. And they don't really do anything with that concept. The rest of the film is your average Seth MacFarlane jokes, which he kind of does shock humor, where he'll say and do things just to shock you. Like there was one point where the bear said to a kid, because they were playing hide and seek, he said, "Don't peek or you'll get kid cancer." That's pretty much on the level of what the jokes are like in this film. And I smiled a lot, and like I said, I found the film amusing. I just don't know how funny I thought this was. I guess this is why I don't review comedies, because the only thing that I can really say about this is I didn't think it was that funny. But I did think that there was a huge missed opportunity here to tell a story about what happens when something novel, when the novelty wears off. I really wanted to see that story, and really all I got was a really standard comedy about two guys who need to grow up, and one guy needing to grow up and getting his girlfriend. I mean, I've seen that so many times. Making one character a talking bear really doesn't change that up enough for me. I mean, I really thought that this was just kind of boring. I will say that Mark Wahlberg sucks, to the point that no matter who I have ever said sucks in the past, Mark Wahlberg will always suck more. And I mean anyone. Hayden Christensen, that kid in Transformers whose name I can't even remember because he's irrelevant now. I think I made the case that he was just doing his job, and I didn't really get on his case that much anyway. But I'm just saying anybody. Mark Wahlberg sucks more than anyone else in the world at acting, and with regard to how little talent he has. And someday Hollywood is going to figure this out. Someday Hollywood is going to figure out that just because we know what his name is, we don't want to see him in movies. And they keep casting him in this fucking shit because they think we know what his name is, so we're going to go see it. Like, they cast him in that Max Payne movie. Fuck him and fuck them. There have been talks that he's going to be casted in the Uncharted movie. Fuck him and fuck them. You know, you can't cast him in roles that are good and that have personalities because he's Mark Wahlberg and he has no talent. Mark Wahlberg sucks at acting more than anybody alive, including me. I could do a better job than him. And all I'd really have to do is stand there. But I will say, this is the role that he needs to be in. Something that doesn't require very much of him, and something where we don't have to take him seriously. This was the greatest role he's ever done because he didn't have to do anything. Replace him with a shrub. Nothing changes. This is another popular demand general review because it's weird. People wanted to know how I felt about this movie in conjunction with them wanting to know how I feel about Family Guy, and I guess Seth MacFarlane in general, whether or not I think that any of this is funny. I don't know why anybody would want to know that, because whether or not I think it's funny doesn't mean anybody else shouldn't. But I don't know. I guess they just want to know how I feel, and that's how I feel. I think Seth MacFarlane can be funny. I think that it's really hit or miss, this kind of like one bam in your face and then it's done joke, and then they move on with the plot, which you get a lot of that in this movie too, but I mean that's his style of humor with pretty much everything that he does. And I think that that's funny to a point, but it gets really old really fast, and I think that that has a better chance of sustaining a television series than it does a film, because after a while it gets really old, and this movie got really old for me really fast. And I feel like I'm just repeating myself. So that's how I felt. I didn't think it was that funny. I think it's worth seeing once. I think if you're more into this kind of humor than I am, that you might like this more than I did. I didn't hate watching this. I just didn't think it was that funny. I will say that whoever did the bear, the special effects team that did the bear, and who designed the bear, they did a great job. And the bear had a lot of personality, and he was completely a character in this movie. He wasn't just a prop, and he wasn't just a special effect. I think the bear was the best thing in the whole film, even just in terms of the effect. But I'm running out of things to say now, so yeah, that's how I felt. This is why I don't do comedies. I didn't think it was that funny. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry, guys. The next time I do a video, I'm going to do my early thoughts on the new Superman film. So look forward to that. In the meantime, didn't think it was that funny.